Well. Guess who's trying to meddle in our elections again? Russia. The US Department of Justice today announced charges against two Russian nationals who were involved in an alleged scheme to influence US audiences with content that contained Russian propaganda.
We allege that as part of that effort, RT and its employees, including the defendants, implemented a nearly $10 million scheme to fund and direct a Tennessee-based company to publish and disseminate content deemed favorable to the Russian government.
The Department of Justice alleges that US-based Tenet Media, which employs a lot of right-wing podcasters and influencers, took millions of dollars from the Russian government to spread pro-Russian propaganda in the US. Kind of like this.
And they know it. But I don't know that it matters anymore. This is psychotic. Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine. They are expanding this war. Now, don't get me wrong. I know you've got criminal elements of the U.S. government pushing them and guiding them and telling them what to do. Ukraine is now accused, a German warrant issued for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, triggering this conflict. Ukraine is the greatest threat to this nation and to the world. We should rescind all funding and financing, pull out all military support, and we should apologize to Russia.
Wow, that rant makes a whole lot of sense now. Now, these influencers probably spread this unknowingly. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but they were used as tools by Russian propagandists to push Russia propaganda in the US to their audiences. Sort of like when House Republicans were used as tools to push Russian lies and propaganda about President Joe Biden in their bogus impeachment inquiry. Remember that? And then it turns out that their star witness was charged with lying to the FBI and had ties to, you guessed it, Russia. And it gets better. Let me show you the topics and target audiences that came from the alleged Russian playbook for election interference. These come from the Justice Department filings. Check out these campaign topics and tell me if they sound familiar. Encroaching universal poverty, record inflation, halting of economic growth, unaffordable prices for food and essential goods. Risk of job loss for white Americans. They're taking our jobs. Privileges for people of color, perverts, and disabled. Reverse racism. Constant lies of the Democratic administration about the real situation in the country. Threat of crime coming from people of color and immigrants, including new immigrants from Ukraine. Sounds like when Republicans blame immigrants for literally every crime and then claim that crime is rising, it isn't. Overspending on foreign policy and at the expense of interests of white US citizens. Ukraine funding? Constant lies to the voters by Democrats in power. Last but not least, America is suffering a defeat despite Biden's efforts. We are being drawn into war. Our guys will die in Ukraine. Wow. I've heard all those things. And here's the target audience. Republican voters, Trump supporters, supporters of traditional family values, white Americans representing the lower, middle, and middle class. It's almost like the entire Republican campaign and policy are Russian talking points, which isn't surprising because remember when Russians tried to meddle in our 2016 election and the Trump campaign welcomed it? Luckily, we have Joe Biden in office, a president who actually stands up to dictators and a Department of Justice that holds them accountable.